if you're going into a psychiatric hospital, that's what you think. You think they're going to help. I'm going to see like a counselor, I'm going to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist. They'll figure out, you know, a diagnosis, they'll figure out a care plan, they'll figure out how to really help me recover and get through this period. Now, you would be very sadly and sorely mistaken. That's not what happens. Ooh. Hi guys, welcome back to Unicorn Corner. If this is your first time here, hello, hola, ¿qué tal? Muy bien, mucho gusto. I am Kez. You can probably see there's like unicorns everywhere, and yeah, that makes Kez and unicorns. Today's featured unicorn is me, because I'm wearing my unicorn wig from Rockstar Wigs. So I thought we would feature myself because I'm narcissistic and enjoy the spotlight like that. That's a joke. I got the lighting a bit darker today. Okay, so today, also, my contacts may slip, which might make me look really, really creepy, but just, I bought them and I want to wear them, so it's what it is. So today we are going to be talking about some of my NHS nightmare stories. I don't even know where to start with this. Oh.
Start at the very beginning.
Quite a lot of people have been asking me for this video because I mentioned doing it over on Twitter, and then people were like commenting and DMing me like, when is this video out? And I was like, I haven't filmed it yet, so I'm doing it now. In all likelihood, this will end up being the first in a multi-part series because I have that many stories that fall under the NHS nightmare category. Obviously, I live in the UK, yay, I guess. And I do feel bad on one aspect, so I do kind of want to say, like, I know that we are very lucky in the UK to have the NHS, to have free access to healthcare. I personally think that should be the case everywhere, but it's not.
Ron!
Hello, Andy.
It's quiet in here. Where is everyone?
The government is shut down. It's in every newspaper.
So I don't want this to come across like I'm moaning about how awful the NHS is. I just want to share some examples with you about experiences that I have had with the NHS. I will put a trigger warning in. It's kind of a blanket trigger warning here. And though I call them stories, they're real, obviously. Every time I wear this wig, I like regress and become a child again. I don't know what that's about, but I love that for me.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
Very quickly, if you don't know me, I'm gonna throw up my Twitter bio because it's so much easier for you to see my various diagnoses. I have borderline personality disorder, I have anorexia, I have depersonalization, derealization, I have some dissociative amnesia, I have anxiety, I get panic attacks quite a lot, I do have depressive episodes, I have attempted suicide, I have flatlined, I have been sexually assaulted, I have been raped, and I was physically and emotionally abused. So that's great. Again, I love that for me. So that's me. Nice to meet ya. Another thing that I will add is I didn't mention it because it's not technically like mental health, but I do have chronic regional pain syndrome, or just, you know, chronic pain. I had a couple of very, very bad injuries on my back. Kind of should have had surgery, didn't, and all my nerves are messed up completely. It's very debilitating. It's very difficult for me to walk without a walking stick, and even with a walking stick it's hard. I live in constant pain, and I'm on a lot of medication for it as well. So I have the physical disability side and the mental, and obviously they do feed into each other quite a lot as well. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm sorry. Okay, so grab a drink. I was raised purely by my mum. My brother is 3 years older than me, and my mum raised us both. My mum was a psychiatric nurse, and she had mental health issues. Bad mental health issues. She had very bad depression. She didn't eat properly, and she very much developed a dependency on alcohol. And by the end, I would go as far as to say that she was an alcoholic. My mum tried to commit suicide the first time when I was around 12 or 13, and she was rushed to hospital, and she was home like the next day, you know, like nothing had happened. And I thought that was so bizarre, because in my opinion, if someone commits suicide, they should be kept in for at least 72 hours to, you know, be able to speak with professionals and make sure they're okay. So I always found that really, really kind of bizarre, that happened. She tried again when I was 15, and again she was rushed to hospital and like released like the next day or the same day even. And that's kind of where my story starts. After her second suicide attempt, my family wanted her to get help, basically. So she was admitted to an NHS psychiatric hospital as a patient. While she was there, she underwent various treatments, like I think she had ECT, and I don't really know much more about what happened. I visited her in that hospital once, and I had been told that she wasn't eating or drinking, and being the big brain 15-year-old I was, I thought, well, in that case I'll take my mum some cuppa soups, because it's kind of food, but it's not food, because you drink out of a mug, so you can trick it into thinking that maybe you're having a drink instead of eating. And my mum always drank Bacardi and Coke, and to this day I will not drink Bacardi. So I took my mum a bottle of Coke, and I don't really remember much of that experience. A lot of my dissociative amnesia is around that time because of how traumatic it was. But the only thing that I remember is my mum saying to me about the Coke, does it have Bacardi in it? And I said, of course not. And she said, I don't want it then. That's actually the last thing I remember my mum saying to me, which is kind of, yeah. And she somehow managed to overdose while in an NHS psychiatric hospital. She was in a psychiatric hospital where she was supposed to be getting help and having people check on her regularly. I do understand that my mum being a psychiatric nurse means that she may have known sort of ways to hide things if you want to sneak them into the hospital, or maybe ways to pretend she was taking medication when she wasn't, and things like that. But to be honest, it still doesn't change the fact that as far as I'm concerned, the NHS let my mum die when they were supposed to be taking responsibility for her. Apparently, and I was only told this a couple of years ago, because up until then my family decided to tell me that it was just a complete accident, and I was like, I'm not an idiot. And the story goes that, I don't know, I swear my uncle said it was him, but it could have been my granddad. I don't speak to my family for a plethora of reasons. But the story goes that one of them went to visit my mum, and it was lunchtime, and when they went into the room they found that she was unconscious. She was not dead, she was rushed to a hospital in London and put in intensive care. And the issue that I have here is that, one, how did she get the medication into the hospital in the first place to overdose on it? Two, apparently she hadn't been seen that day since the night before. And having been in a psychiatric hospital myself as a patient, they check on you like hourly. Like, I had people coming into my room at night to check that I was breathing. So how the hell they missed my mum overdosing on medication to the extent that they didn't even check on her at meds time, which is around 7 a.m. They weren't confused when she wasn't there. They didn't check on her. To me, this is an absolute failure from the NHS, and it's not okay. And had I known the situation more, I probably would have pursued legal charges. But I was lied to about a lot of it. This was I was 15. I didn't know my dad, and my mum was everything. And for her to be in a place where she's supposed to be getting help, and for her to be able to do that, I don't know if a nightmare can be much worse than losing the most important person in your life. I don't think that's possible, and I don't think that it's possible to try and say that what the NHS did was okay, because it wasn't. And that's that. She died a few days later. I had gone up to see her. We were told that there was about a 10% chance that she would survive. She didn't, and she passed away, sadly. So that was the first one. I'm sorry, but these are not going to be particularly fun. I'm very well practiced at trying to act like I'm fine when I'm not, so I'm going to try and not be too emotional or sappy or miserable when doing these, but they are true. They are my life, and they are things that I think are a problem on a systematic level. The other reason that I tell you this story about my mom is because a few years ago, I was in a psychiatric hospital. I was released after about 28 days. I put myself there. I was not sectioned. While I was there, the other patients would come up to me and tried to give me tips on how to sneak medication or razors or things like this into the ward, and I was very confused by this, and I was very much like, no, I put myself here because I don't want to kill myself, so why are you telling me how to sneak things in? And on top of that, while I was there was one patient who kind of attempted to kill himself a number of times. I would say at least once a week for the 4 weeks that I was there. He would self-harm, and he would find any way possible to self-harm and to attempt suicide, and all they would do is remove things from his bedroom so that he couldn't use them to hurt himself. But he was resourceful. But you know, when you know that someone is constantly trying to do that, and the people that work in the hospital are just kind of like, just like, take his bed away so we can't use that. It just, again, feels like an absolute systematic failure on people that have mental health issues. If you're in a psychiatric hospital, then you should be getting help, and it's not the way people think it is. But I will, should I tell this story? I don't know. I'll talk about my experience in a psychiatric hospital now. This situation leads directly to another one. So while I was in hospital, I needed help. I knew that I did. I was at home and I was an absolute wreck. And we called the crisis team, and they sent someone out, and then they sent a doctor out and agreed to take me out of my home. In the UK, the NHS don't like putting people in hospital when it's mental health based. They have this theory that keeping people in their community is better. But the truth of the matter is the community mental health teams just aren't good enough, and the support that you get in the community is not good enough. So I went into a psychiatric hospital. Now, it's really important here to understand that I have a physical disability. Living with severe chronic pain, having my back be the way it is incredibly debilitating. And I'm not sure if I went in with crutches. I think I went with crutches and a walking stick, because why not have everything? And I went into the hospital and they checked me in, and
Hey, how you doing? Well, I'm doing just fine. I lied, I'm dying inside.
And you know, I'm there and I've got like my suitcase with my stuff, and I'm not allowed some stuff for a few days because they need to make sure you can't hurt yourself. And it kind of seemed fine at the beginning. I thought they're gonna help me, right? Because that's what you think. If you're going into a psychiatric hospital, that's what you think. You think they're going to help. I'm going to see a counsellor.
Nope.
I'm going to see a psychiatrist,
Nope.
psychologist.
Nope.
They'll figure out, you know, a diagnosis. They'll figure out a care plan. They'll figure out how to really help me recover and get through this period. Now, you would be very sadly and sorely mistaken. That's not what happens. Like, not at all. So I was put onto a ward where I had a bedroom to myself. You weren't allowed to go in other people's bedrooms, and we had baths, which is obviously great for me because with my back I can't take showers. That is important to remember. So because of the way mental health facilities work in the UK, they don't do it necessarily based on, you know, like they don't have like all of the people that might be schizophrenic or be having a dissociative episode or anything like that, and then have people that may have attempted suicide or have severe depression. It's not done like that. You have a range of people. So the ward that I was on, there was someone who was having an episode of some sort, and this person just was not sleeping. I don't think they slept for like over a week. It was wow. I just found the whole thing problematic. The fact that there was someone who kept trying to commit suicide and they didn't take it seriously enough, to me was just not okay. Now, the main things that I want to focus on here are a few. So for the first few weeks, I was kind of fine. There was medication time. I saw
a psychiatrist,
and
the psychiatrist
asked me a few questions, and
the psychiatrist,
being, you know, a
psychiatrist,
not, you know, a neurologist or that kind of doctor, decided after meeting me for not very long that I didn't have a back problem, and that I should be put on antipsychotics because I'm just delusional. And this is a problem. You cannot decide to put someone on something as strong as antipsychotics when you don't even know their history about their physical health, and when you're not a physical specialist.
a psychiatrist,
You're a mental health specialist.
a psychiatrist.
Just, what do you want, a fucking medal?
So I took what he said about my mind seriously enough.
A psychiatrist.
I also had a psychologist come to see me, and apparently she was told the wrong room, and she went and knocked on the door of the person next door to me who was in a mood and told this psychologist to F off.
Leave me alone!
And the psychologist did.
Fine.
And wrote down that I had said F off.
This girl is the nastiest skank bitch I've ever met.
And then, you know, about half an hour later, I'm like, I swear I was meant to have a meeting with the psychologist today.
Hey, where are you going?
So I go out of my room to speak to someone and they're like,
Yeah, you told her to F off.
and I'm like, no, I didn't. And I then had to prove that I didn't. I had to go and find my friend and ask her and take the information back so that they knew that I didn't tell someone to F off. Now, this might sound like a small thing, but to me, how you interact with people is going to have a big impact on the way you get treated in a psychiatric hospital. The people that you're seeing,
A psychiatrist,
psychologist, read your notes before they speak to you.
This girl is the nastiest skank bitch I've ever met.
If it has in there that I've been rude to staff, if I've told people to F off when I haven't, that's a problem. And the fact that instead of believing me and taking me at my word, I had to go and prove my innocence when I'm actually at a point in my life when I kind of just want to die. And I'm having to prove to someone that I didn't say F off and that a psychologist did not knock on my door. It's a good job that I knew the person in the room next to me and that it was them, because how do you prove the absence of something? I mean, of course, it would have been proven when the psychologist did see me and would have been like, oh, you're not the person that I spoke to. But whether the psychologist would have actually amended the notes or not, I don't know. Another thing that happened that's really ridiculous is if you're honest about certain situations in your life, like, you know, if you're asked if you ever self-harm or anything like that, and if you're honest and you say yes and you tell them the last time, they won't provide you with the support that you need to stop doing that destructive behavior, because you need to stop doing that destructive behavior before we can help you. This is the logic of the NHS, okay? Oh, you're self-harming every day. Well, you need to stop self-harming before we'll help you to stop self-harming. It's like, you know, when you need a loan from a bank because you don't have enough money, and the bank's like,
Well, prove to us that you don't need this money, and then we'll give you the money.
what? And the NHS seems to work on the same way. If you self-harm, you won't get the help that you need until you stop self-harming.
That makes sense to me.
They ask you about what you want to eat each day. And on my first day, I went in to the dining room and was given my food, and I sat down and I couldn't eat it because there were so many people standing up staring at me. Now, it's important to note at this point that I've struggled with food multiple times throughout my life, but never as much as I have over the last few years. I guess in a way I'm lucky because my disability means that I can't really exercise a lot, but it does mean that I focus a lot on what I put into my body, and I'm kind of at a very strange point because technically I need help with it, but because I'm an adult I can say no because I don't agree with the way they treat people with anorexia. But I decided that I couldn't eat in the dining room. I just couldn't do it. So I left. And I explained why, and I left. I didn't eat for like a month because I could not go in that room. I could not sit there and have people stare at me while I was eating. Oh, could they not have, you know, offered to bring the food to my room? Probably. Did they? No. Why would we do that? Did they notice, Kez, that you you weren't eating? Yes, they did notice I wasn't eating, and they decided to put me on this lovely concoction called Ensure, which is basically like a vanilla milkshake that you drink 3 times a day to provide you with the nutrients that you need to not die. But are we going to actually look at the fact that you're not eating food and that that's clearly a destructive behavior that maybe you should get some help for, considering you're in a psychiatric hospital? No, we're not going to look at that. I'm sure there will be parts of this story that I bring that I might have missed out today, but I'm trying to pick some really bad moments, and one of the worst ones is now. This one is particularly bad in my opinion. So when you go into a psychiatric hospital, you would think that as an adult who chose to put themselves into a psychiatric hospital, that I would have been treated with a little bit of respect. And being someone who has to take very strong medication on a daily basis, it would be understood that I had a physical health problem too. Instead of them assuming that they can fix everything by putting me on antipsychotics, which they didn't actually do in the end, which I was actually very annoyed at, because I'd finally gotten to the point where I was like, you know what, I've had chronic pain for over a decade. If antipsychotics somehow fix that, I'm in. But as soon as I said that, everything changed. It's important to recall here that I talk about the medication that I take on a daily basis. I'm just going to share with you what I take, because I want to be open and transparent about it. So I take oral morphine on a daily basis. I take oxycodone every day. I take gabapentin, I take amitriptyline, I take diazepam, I take bisoconazole, and I take another one which I can't remember the name of, on a daily basis. So there are a lot of opioids there. I was on fentanyl for a while, but they switched me to oxy, and probably I will be switched onto something else soon, because obviously your body gets a dependency on certain medications. Now, if I don't have my oxy and my oral morphine, the pain is severe. I will be talking, I'm going to do a video talking about like living with chronic pain, CRPS, that kind of thing, but it's a lot. It actually makes it very difficult when I'm having problems and paramedics or whatever will ask, you know, what's your pain level out of 10? And I'm like, well, the amount of pain that I'm in on a daily basis is higher than what most people, my normal is much higher than most people's normal. Most people, if they had the pain that I had, they would probably lie in bed until it went away. And I was basically stuck in bed and in a wheelchair for a long time. And it's very difficult for me to kind of get up and know that I'm going to be in pain. But anyway, you're probably thinking, why is she going off on one? Because while I was there, I provided my own medications to them to start with, because obviously they don't necessarily know straight away or have them in stock. Now, they didn't check my medication properly, and there was a point where they didn't have, I wasn't on oxy at the time, I think I was on fentanyl at the time, and they didn't have it. And it was bad. And I was like, look, I'm not trying to be difficult with you, but you are not general health, nurses, professionals. You will not be able to handle me if I don't get my medication, because it is agonizing. And they said, well, you know, we have to wait for a general doctor to let us get it because of the type of drug it is. And it was a whole big thing. Anyway, eventually I did get it, but I got it late and I was in agony, and they kind of acted like, almost like I was putting on a show.
The show must go on.
Or they just acted very much not in a way that I think is acceptable. I think they should be trying to assure you and make sure that you're comfortable and everything like that, because if physically you're having problems, that is going to have an effect on your mental health too. One thing that I noticed while I was there is that they seem to be under this impression that you can't have both. So as I said, I went in with my crutches and I was on a ward where they had a bath, which was fantastic. And I would take very, very long baths and they would have to check on me every 15 minutes and it was fun times. And don't get me wrong, there were 3 people that I met on that ward that worked there that were lovely people. Lovely people. But just as I started to get better, they decided to move me to a different ward where there was no bath. So I had a standing shower, which I couldn't use. And did they know about this? Yes. Did I tell them? Yes. Did they do anything? No. Once they moved me, they also became incredibly abusive. The first ward that I was on, as I said, there were like 3 people that were so lovely. A lot of the staff were okay. No one was particularly like evil. But to be perfectly honest with you, at that point, they basically looked at me and just said, oh, she's got depression and anxiety. It wasn't until I was in the community that I actually managed to get my actual diagnosis. So they moved me to a different ward. So I couldn't wash in that ward because there was no bath, and they knew that and they didn't care. And also, the first ward that I'd been in, they understood that I had severe chronic pain. And when it was particularly bad, they would bring the meds to my room so that I could take them, so that they would work, because sometimes I just am in more pain than other times. But when I moved, they did not do this. They would knock on my door and they would tell me it's meds time, and I would say I'm in too much pain to move, and they tell me to stop being a lazy bitch. It got to the point where I phoned the hospital reception from my mobile to speak to the nurse's office of my ward to explain the situation. And they hung up on me, and they told me that if I phoned the reception in the hospital again, they would take my phone away. And I mean, bravo on that one. Yes, threaten to take someone's phone away. Don't worry about the fact that they then won't be able to communicate with, their partner, who is the only reason they're alive. And it even got to a point where I had to have my partner phone me, and he would just go silent while I was having conversations with the staff so he could hear them too. The thing is, there was no reason to move me to a different ward. The second ward that they moved me to, the staff just were not good in general. The psychiatrist I was meant to see wasn't good. There was one guy on that. There was a guy who was the psychologist who was brilliant, and there were 2 assistants to the psychiatrist that I was supposed to be seeing, and they were very nice, but they weren't really there. So most of the time you're there with staff who treated me disgustingly, who didn't care that I couldn't wash, who didn't respect the fact that I had a physical disability that put me in a lot of pain, would shout abuse at me, would threaten to take my stuff, and would basically make out like I was some monster when I already felt like that. It got so bad that I told Chris that I needed to leave the hospital because it was making me worse.
I'll be okay. It's just I don't think I handled it very well.
So if you think that when someone goes into a psychiatric hospital they get all the help and support and treatment they need, you would be sorely mistaken. You are left on your own about 95% of the time. The only time most of the staff there care about you is when it's time for meds. And having the fact that my mum was a psychiatric nurse, and then also the fact that my mum committed suicide in a psychiatric hospital, that would automatically make me wary of NHS psychiatric hospitals. But the experience there was crazy. There were other times when I would The experience there was crazy. That's great word choice, Kez. The experience there was intense and disgusting. There would be times when I would have to phone Chris, and then Chris would have to phone the hospital because I wasn't allowed to have like my own voice. Everything had to go through Chris. So if I had a complaint, they didn't care. Chris would have to complain. And let's remind you, I'm a fully grown, whole-ass adult woman who likes to dress like a unicorn. But I am an adult woman, and to have it that basically when you go into a psychiatric hospital, you lose all of your rights. It felt like a prison. Luckily, the psychologist was really great, as I said. The psychologist in the second ward was absolutely fantastic. And he referred me to an organisation that helps people when they come out of hospital, Assist, but they're not national. They just happened to be where I was. And they were fantastic, and they worked with me for twice as long as they had to because of my back problems. Because unfortunately, even in the community, they'll be like, yeah, you get to see your care coordinator and whoever X amount of times, but you have to go to them. So if I'm struggling, if I'm in a lot of pain, couldn't they just come to your house care, seeing as they would happily go to other people's? Well, yes, they could. Did they? No. Why would they? It's like they make your life so difficult. And I don't, like, part of me would like to believe that there's something in that about changing someone's emotional state from passive to active, from being, I just want to give up and die, to no, this isn't okay, because anger is a powerful emotion. And if you're feeling miserable and someone is able to snap you into angry, it makes you more active, it makes you more involved in your life again. And while I say that, I would love to believe that that was the whole reason that psychiatric hospitals were so bad. Unfortunately, it's not. They're just bad. More recently, I had a welfare check, and the police took me to my local hospital where I had to talk with them. I made a comment about dealing with all of this crap or something, and they said,
"Oh, you're insulting us."
And I was like, what? They completely took what I said. They gaslit me. Then they tried to act like they weren't going to help me at all, to which I was like, well, that's not fair. Then they were like,
"Fine, but we need like a big guy, bodyguard type person, because we're scared of your tiny 4'11"
body. Because, yeah, I can really hurt people.
Yeah, I'm 4'11", I'm a miniature human.
Okay, no. Once they got there and they'd made it very clear that they wanted to just completely manipulate the situation and make out like I did things that I didn't, I started self-harming right in front of them. Sometimes I self-harm and I'm not consciously doing it. I'm going to explain what my type of self-harm is, so if you don't want to hear that, then just skip to this time code. So basically, you can see very rough scars on my hand here. So I will take my nail and do this, chicken scratch it really badly. And I do have scars on my hands as a result of that. That is my type of self-harm, as well as my eating disorder. And I was doing this right in front of them. And they could see what I was doing. Did they do anything? No. They completely ignored it. And then just left me. When the police had been called because people thought I was going to take my own life, and they decided to gaslight me, manipulate me, make me feel like a piece of crap, watch me self-harm, and then just say bye.
You idiot. You're honestly an idiot. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Just before my birthday of the year that I had been in hospital, my friend, my next door neighbour while I was in hospital, was back in hospital. And she told me that they were going to release her, so I should get my funeral outfit ready. Now, knowing that someone I knew had been attempting suicide like every other day while I was in hospital with them, knowing what happened with my mum, I'm obviously not going to just take that. So I phoned the hospital and explained what I had received and explained my concern. And when I phoned a couple of days later to check that they'd received the information on the ward, they hadn't. And my friend committed suicide on the ward. And I warned them, and I told them, and they didn't communicate that information to the ward, to the psychiatrist involved with this person's case. And she died. So yeah, that's some of my NHS nightmare stories. I have a lot more. And as I said, like, while I'm trying to tell you these in a way that's not super emotional, I've very much detached myself from those situations. They are serious situations. They were my life. They were bad. I did attempt suicide after I left the psychiatric hospital. I was raped shortly after, and I did attempt suicide. They are hard to talk about, but I have raised formal complaints about these types of situations, and nothing ever happens as a result. I will do another one of these with some other stories on there, because there are many more that I could talk about, but I've been talking for nearly an hour. So I think we'll leave it there for today. I hope it was interesting to hear some of my experiences with the psychiatric system in the UK. If you are from the UK and you've had similar experiences or different experiences, like if you're from a different country, it would be great to hear what it's like in your country, and you feel able to share or wanting to share. That would be great. Let us know in the comments. If you've got bad stories that happened to you or great stories that happened to you, that would be great to hear as well. As I said, there were a number of people in that hospital that were fantastic, and I'm not saying that everyone that works for the NHS is bad, but what I'm saying is there are systematic problems and they are failing people. So while this is bad stories, it is marking a bigger issue. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Also, if you want to reach out to me and talk privately, you can DM me on Twitter. That is the best way to at the moment. I know this has been some pretty heavy material, but I think it's important that we get this kind of information out there, and you guys were asking for it. So as I said, I hope it was interesting to hear what it's like in the UK. For me, obviously, there are probably people that have fantastic experiences. Unfortunately, I'm just not one of those people. And yeah, if you did enjoy it, then please do think about subscribing or supporting my channel. And follow me on social media. I like to talk a lot about this kind of stuff, and I have lots of hot takes on things. So yeah, subscribe, join the family, and that's it. I will see you in the next video. Arigatou gozaimasu. And keep unicorning. Bye. Bye.